Yeah, gets away from Kante, plays down the line for Suarez. 98 team of the year, Suarez.
He's a big
past
chance.
Ramos.
Suarez, what's he going to do? Tries to feed it back. Is that going to come to Ronaldo? Just trying to get a foot on that, maybe. Pull it now. The man that Bullock loves. Half turn there from Torres. Vieira back to Suarez on the finesse, and there we have it. The Bullock is in London. He turns around. He celebrates. The Bullock. He had a plan, and he's performed it.
You're listening to the FUT Champions Podcast with Richard and Brandon.
What is going on, and welcome along to the FUT Champions Podcast, Week 1. This is a brand new feature for the competitive FIFA scene where we're going to be focused on pretty much entirely on the weekend league at the weekend, everything happening in the competitive scene. And of course, I'm not on my own. Next to me is that man, Richard Buckley. Richard, hello mate, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing quite well, to be honest, Brandon. The birth of the FUT Champs Podcast, it's something we've been thinking about for quite a long time.
It's been brewing, isn't it?
It's finally come to fruition, but we're not on our own. We've got quite a jam-packed show coming up.
Yeah, we have. We've got Fanatic Colin. Some of you may know him as the AS Roma eSports manager. Colin, hello mate, welcome along to the podcast. How are you doing?
Doing well. I'm glad to be a part of this project. I think that there's been a real lack of kind of a true place where people can go and listen about competitive FIFA and hear some nice analysis, breakdowns, and then as well kind of chat about the weekend league and give some people kind of more of an insight into what FIFA eSports is all about.
Exactly. So the aim of this show is we're going to be looking at so many different things within the competitive scene. We're going to be looking at what's going on with Weekend League, who's been doing well. We're going to have a top 100 pro on every single week. We have got one with us right now. We'll introduce him very, very shortly. Everything happening in the scene we'll be looking at. So players joining new clubs. So we'll be talking about anything that you guys want to hear as well. The hashtag for the show is hashtag FUT Champs Pod. Obviously, make sure you get in touch over on Twitter as well. But Richard, we've got a special guest for us today, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. He's currently killing the scene, you could say, at the minute. It is Megabit. Welcome to the show.
Hello, my friends. It's an honor for me to be here, to be the first pro you want to interview as the podcast.
And if you don't know this guy, 80-0 over on the Xbox, 79-1 over on PlayStation, 160 games this month you played in this qualifying month.
Yeah, exactly.
How are you alive still?
It's kind of okay for me. I have much time at the moment at the weekend and stop partying for this month. So I'm actually quite fit for the games and I can do it because really many people rage quit.
Yeah. But obviously you are a pro player for a club. Is it in the Bundesliga 2? Any German people out there probably hate me for this pronunciation. VfL Bochum. on some lines, maybe correct. But obviously you joined them earlier this year. Let's just talk about that for a minute. What was it like to finally join the club? I know you were with Stark eSports and you may still be connected with them. Shout out to them. They're a fantastic organisation. Obviously they've worked with a number of German clubs. But how was it to really get that move over the line?
When I made my first offline appearance at the FIWC 2016, I managed to talk to Salzer. He was signed to VfL Wolfsburg then. And from this moment on, it was my aim to be a part of a club too. And I worked like 2 years hard for this aim. And with the change in March to Stark eSports agency, currently the best agency around here,
Definitely.
They made this move possible. And without them, it wouldn't be possible. So
Got a question for Colin. Megabit there speaking about joining a club. How do you think there's validation in pro players joining real life football clubs and an eSport organisation? Because there's a few players at the minute currently free agents.
I 100%, because if you think about it, a lot of the pros right now, there's not enough prize money necessarily in the scene to justify not having a team and not maybe having a really big social media and being able to support yourself. So having a club and having a salary kind of sets you up in a way that you can say, I am a professional pro player, There are some people that may call themselves pros even that maybe play competitively, but since they don't have organizations, they might not have the income that gives them the necessary amount of time to, dedicate to the game. So I think Megabit is very accurate when talking about it is a big deal to come into a club because it offers validation. It shows that not only only is this team, willing to invest in you, but they're willing to give you the resources necessary to, execute on all of the goals that you might have as an actual professional.
Also, just on that point, you said about what kind of confirms you as a pro player, because I see a lot on Twitter as well, and there's a lot of people that say, I'm a pro player, I'm a competitive FIFA player. Do you think it is when you sign for a club and you start maybe not essentially earning a living off the game, but taking a monthly wage, is that when you can kind of call yourself a pro player?
Yeah, I mean, so I think if you look at someone like Gorilla or something, if he was unsigned, I don't think you couldn't call him a pro player, just because of the amount of events he's gone to, the amount of events he's won, and his income as well being supplemented by his social media and by his YouTube channel. But if you have someone that's like been to 2 tournaments and maybe plays for a really lower tier organization or something like that, it kind of gets into some murky waters, because if you're in school and, you're living with your parents and maybe you're playing competitively, but you're not necessarily making a living off of the game, it's kind of hard to say, like, are you really a pro player? So I think the line is kind of sketchy, but if you play for a club, there's no doubt about it, you're definitely a pro player, and you're definitely at this point making enough to support yourself, which is, I think, very important for players, because that's, I think, most pros' dreams, is to not have to worry about anything else, not have to worry about money, but just be able to play the game.
And Michael, to anyone out there that wants to take FIFA seriously, wants to sign to a club, I know it takes a number of years to come along, but what advice would you give to them?
A huge advice is to actually play online tournaments like Gfinity. At the moment it's not possible as there are no cups, but I hope they will come soon. And it's the best training you can get if you train under the week with pros, and you can actually gain some prize money and you get some attention because of it. And the other way, of course, is the weekend league. If you manage to win 38 every week and get top 100 every week, there will be a few organizations that take a look at you and may get you started with the competitive scene.
Yeah.
Megabit, I just had one more question for you about kind of the differentiation between certain players taking the option of either choosing a club or an esports organization. What kind of drove you towards the club choice? Was it just kind of that Stark, set you up in that way so it was easy, or, did your mind ever go like, maybe I want to play for one of the bigger esports organizations that's also looking for players right now?
Before I signed to Stark, I was in good talks to Epsilon, so this would actually have been a normal or traditional esports organization, but I wanted to go to a football club because the attention you get there is something completely different, and you can gain your community, get started with YouTube, Twitch easier and things like that, participate in more offline events, and that's what I want, and I think I made the right decision.
Speaking of that question, Colin, between an organisation and a club, recently just saw Joey join New York City FC, formerly playing for Epsilon. Any thoughts on that? Recently, we've had a little bit of could you say roster mania? Everybody jumping ship, really, before FIFA 18?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities right now for pros, and there's a lot of bigger organizations that I think are willing to kind of spend the money on certain players. And I think Joey was a player that was very high in demand after his really excellent performances at FIWC at the end of last year. So I think he got his name out there in a big way, and he had a lot of organizations' eyes on him. And I think the one thing that might have affected his choice is that this year with the new competitive structure, it's no longer region locked. So when people are qualifying, it's just top 64 from the world, and it's no longer finishing top 12 in your region. So I think that made Joey's choice to stay in America probably a bit easier. As well, I think you're going to see a lot more MLS clubs coming in for players like Joey. You had a lot of players, I think, impress at the end of last year, obviously with guys like Filthy and as well Amon, of course, formerly of Roma. So I think there's a lot of attention around picking up North American players, but I don't think there's as much as there was last year, as some organizations felt like it was a necessity because of the region locking. And I think that's why you saw a lot of rest of world pickups as well.
I also think as well, speaking of the North American and the rest of the world region, the FIWC 2017 finals in London, I think a lot of the American and rest of the world players actually impressed. They went under the radar at the regionals because it didn't have the eyes on it. And then at the grand final, I remember Janos beating Rocky. I think it was like 6-1 in one of the quarterfinals. And that drew a lot of eyes to people like Janos, Lucas Rep, Nicholas from Argentina. And they're all starting to come to fruition now.
Yeah, when I watched that tournament, actually, I thought that Janos and Nicholas were like two of the best players of that tournament, like no holds barred. I thought Janos was actually unfortunate to not make it past Gorilla. He gave Gorilla a pretty tough test as well.
Very good game,
Yeah, so I think guys like that are just going to keep getting better and better. And we'll see, bigger organizations probably coming in for the likes of the South Americans as well. It's just obviously a bit more difficult to, I think, bring those guys in just because of how the distance, like say if a European organization wanted to pick them up, like it's going to be a little bit difficult to kind of interact as well as, I think PSG's done a good job with Rafifa and stuff like that. So I think it's possible. It's just, we'll just have to wait and see where those guys end up.
And, leading on from, of course, FIWC last year, it was in the news probably around a month ago now, a little bit longer back, but we've had the announcement, Rich, the upcoming qualification year, what's the process on it? So what we can kind of see from this is the main qualifying month this month and then the next one in February, but there's not that much detail about these other tournaments out there. What are you thinking, Rich? What could be, in the works as well that we're not seeing?
I mean, anything is possible right now, to be honest. I think, as Megabit said earlier, with the Gfinity Cups, I think people just need to get online as soon as they can. And at the minute with FUT Champions, it's very hard to rank yourself almost because you're not playing every single game on that weekend against a competitive player at your level. Whereas with the likes of the Gfinity Cups, you can always play against somebody at your level. We saw it towards the end of the last year with the likes of Kurt saying, I've won another Gfinity Cup, I've won another Gfinity Cup against people, other pros.
Speaking of Kurt and people quitting, Michael can come in on this conversation as well. Kurt said he quit 2 weeks ago. Next thing you know, it's a 40-0 and I think he put quite a funny gif on saying he's back. There's been a few players that, said, I've had enough this year.
But with Sam, didn't we, recently? He said that he didn't want to play anymore.
What do you think's the turning point for a lot of these guys, Michael?
I don't know. I mean, for me, the game makes much more fun than last year. The passing system is a bit better, more exception of really more fluently. And yeah, of course, there's some randomness in this game. I mean, you defend really well, but the auto passes make the pass go to the opponent and then he'll score. I think many people don't like this, but I don't know. Kurt was demotivated because of one disconnect. I mean, that's a bit harsh, but probably he wanted to do 160 out of 160 this month.
But just speaking of that, like the gap of quality between 40-0 and 39-0 and 38-0, 37-0, it's such a big gap. We're looking at some of the leaderboards now. Of course, it's only you and Ty Walton on that Xbox leaderboard with 80 wins, but the amount of people that are hitting 78s at least.
And even between 40, 39 and 38 wins, there's actually no real huge gap because, I mean, you can get unlucky with your opponents, can get a few top 100 players in a row, and other players get 40 and don't play any top 100 players at the weekend.
Well, touch wood, I don't think I've actually touched a top 100 player yet. But, we've seen the qualification period this year. FIFA E Club World Cup, obviously, and the FIFA E World Cup. Colin, what's your thoughts on the name? For me, I don't see the big problem with it. I actually quite like it. Everyone seems to not be a fan of it, but I don't really mind it.
Well, I just think that, when it comes to the esports industry in particular, there's a lot of people and a lot of organizations coming in and just putting E in front of things. And I think there was actually the E-Sailing World Championships just came
really?
out.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and Red Eye can probably tell you a lot. If you follow Red Eye on Twitter, he loves it when people put E in front of it. But
I've seen him. He loves it. He's been tweeting about it and.
Yeah,
too happy about it, but.
I think the FIFA one is probably the least offensive of the ones I've seen. It's not horrible, but I actually liked the name FIFA Interactive World Cup. It just felt it flows nicely. There's no like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as disingenuous maybe as like some of the other names that have come out recently.
You got the acronym as well, FIWC.
Right? It just works. Like is it FEWC or is it just FEC now? Like there's no like real abbreviation for it. But I think the name's probably not the most important bit about it. It's probably the actual changes that have come with it.
I think for me, I was just happy to see, some really exciting plans for this year. And I was like, guys, come on. Yes, the name might not be what you want it to be, but for a lot of the community, I don't think anyone really bothered. They were just happy to see, right, qualifying months in November. Let's get our heads on that now and let's start focusing on that.
The first thing that I think that needs to be addressed that a lot of people aren't realizing is that EA has massively taken, in my opinion, I think they've taken the focus off of Weekend League. Because if you actually look at the commitment that players are going to have to put in this year compared to last year, it's like 40% of the time. So where last year, you had 5 months essentially where you had to play every 40 games if you were a professional player. Whereas this year, you only have to play 2 months essentially, and then maybe like a week or two. I'm not sure how the last chance qualifier works, but this year they've essentially cut the time that players have to play 40 games in half.
I think Rich can probably add to this as well, but yes, I see that, but at the same time, I see opportunities for a number of clubs, football clubs, to get involved, esports organisations to say, you know what, can we host a tournament, EA? Can we bring a bit of attention to us? Can we maybe entice other clubs to jump on this esports kind of roller coaster and us to get involved?
I agree with what Colin was saying with the time constraint being shortened down, but I think as well with the time being shortened down, that players actually are necessary to play in the months where you're building up to a tournament. I think that's when you want to see your football clubs coming in, your other esports organisations coming in and hosting tournaments to get players ready for these huge tournaments, which are going to have life-changing amounts of money on the line. Going back, the Ziggo battle last year that were hosted in Amsterdam, the Ajax Arena, a lot of people went into that tournament. I remember Tass saying, I'm coming into this tournament to get ready for the final, the FIWC final, because there's not a lot of LAN events where you can play as if it's a huge competition.
Yeah, that's the massive thing is, when you look, if you actually like roll through the document that EA released with, the new competitive structure, there's supposed to be 30 plus spots available for, LAN events, which means we're going to have multiple events over the next, 6 months that are going to give players avenues into, these regionals, into this final. That aren't necessarily just getting 160 wins. So I think you're going to see maybe players that you aren't even used to seeing, maybe, or players that maybe don't play as well online but maybe are better at LAN come out and succeed in really cool ways, because you'll have these different tournaments. I mean, I think the most exciting thing is thinking about people like Gfinity and ESL and IEM and all of those type of people coming in and hosting their own tournaments and having us as a part of, like, could you imagine FIFA being one of the featured tournaments at like DreamHack in the same way that ESWC was featured at PGW, So I think more events like that where you have FIFA guys and then the next day it's Counter-Strike, like that's when that FIFA is going to be a true tier 1 esport, is when you have like, one day you're watching Cloud9 versus, North in Counter-Strike and the next day you're watching Rocky versus Gorilla. I think that's the moment that we're going to be like, okay, this is really getting up there.
And of course, speaking of LAN events, Michael, you've been to a few, you did exceptionally well, not the year just gone, but the year before in the FIFA Interactive World Cup. What's the main difference for you? Me and Rich talk about it a lot. Is it, the fact you've got to come travel out, you've got to play in some really, hot conditions sometimes, so maybe some essentially sweaty conditions. But what's the main difference for you and the real struggles of LAN events for you?
I mean, if I take a look back to my first offline experience at the FIWC 2016, there was such a huge difference to my last offline experience. And I mean, it was actually my first offline event, except for like 2 €100 cups in my little hometown. So this was the first time for me, and suddenly all the medias like Kicker in Germany and things like that wanted to talk to you. And even a German TV channel made a
Documentary?
the documentary, yes. And I wasn't used to that. And I think I lost to Luka Modric. Dylan Bunce, he was in the semi-final that FIWC, and I completely lost my focus. I couldn't concentrate anymore. I felt like never before. And 2 years later, I think I'm really more experienced, going more calm to these events and concentrating on just on your own and focusing on your own, and it will get better and better.
So do you think, yes, it's fantastic that, there's loads of coverage now on the events, but as a player, would you say it's maybe better just to stay away from that and then go and do your media coverage at the end of the day?
You just need to get used to it. I mean, everything comes with practice, even the communication with media. So I'm fine now, and it doesn't influence my performance at all, I think at least. But we will see, hopefully in January.
Well, leading on from that, Rich, there's going to be a lot more fresh faces this year coming into the competitive scene. Michael said there, it's taken him a few events there just to maybe get used to that pressure, the different kind of situations and environments. Are we going to see that a lot next year with a lot of new players coming in?
I think we're going to see a lot of new players coming into the scene. I just don't know how they're going to be able to cope with the lights, the cameras, the staging, the things like that. I think for me, one player that I want to pinpoint from last year was Shells. Shells went into I think he went to, he goes to Paris and Madrid, and then he had the Berlin final, which everybody remembers. And he went in as an underdog, nobody really knew him. He went to that final, and he took home $80,000, and he was very unfortunate not to win the whole event. He then went to the FIWC grand final, a lot more people knew him, a bigger social media following, expectation from him, and I don't want to say he crumbled, but he didn't play to his potential, and he didn't play anywhere near the standard that he did in Berlin.
I think
these players, also another one, Expect Sporting, the Club World Cup, fantastic performance from him. He then went to the grand final, again, didn't perform.
Colin, you can maybe come into this situation. Do you think there is a lot of pressure put on players at events? Because I felt like a lot of the English boys, the Gorillas, the Tasses, even Stacks and stuff, I think they had more pressure on them than the Americans, which I think worked into their favour.
Yeah, if you look at being around Amman during that event, you could definitely see that we were just kind of there and saying, we know we can beat these guys. It's just a case of who shows up on the day. And as you guys saw, a lot of the people that you would consider favorites didn't really show up. Tass finished bottom of his group. Danny barely made it out of his group. Like you guys said already, Stacks and Sporting had really poor tournaments as well. So I think it left a lot of room for the Americans to kind of come in and put even more pressure on them. Like a lot of these guys go out there, they lose their first game, and then they play the American or the South American, and in their mind they might think, oh, this is my guaranteed win. But then they come in against a guy they've never played before and realize, oh, this guy's actually really good. So I think a lot of those players hopefully have kind of learned their lessons from now on and will, not count anyone as a guaranteed win. Because even Amon said that one of the best players he played at the entire tournament was the Japanese player, Subaritas, who was in our group as well, and they actually drew, I think, 1-1. And so, you never know who's actually going to be your kryptonite at these tournaments. And unfortunately, for a lot of those big European players, it was, the America's players that were their kryptonite.
Well, a lot of the players as well that I did speak to said that AA Megazip, the player from Qatar, was one of the hardest players that they actually played against. They'd never played against him before. A lot of the players going into the tournament had never heard of him before. And he went in, and I think he finished 5th, if I remember correctly.
I think it was goal difference, actually.
Very unfortunate not to get into that top 4 and go through to the next day.
And of course, that's kind of a recap of some of the stuff that's happened last year. If you are listening, it is hashtag FUT Champs Pod. Obviously, you can connect with us on Twitter, iTunes, or YouTube, wherever you are listening to. Let's just focus on, obviously, we've got Michael here, we've got a pro. Michael, I know you can't obviously give away too much of your secret to an 80-0, but let's just talk about a few things. Let's go back to the first weekend in FIFA 18. How was your team looking? Who was your kind of standout players? Who was like the bargain back then? You may not have had many coins back then, but who was your go-to player? We're seeing Gabriel Jesus is that cheap kind of bargain that a lot of people are liking. Who was your player?
I grinded a few weeks only FUT draft with some FIFA points, so I actually didn't have the worst team to start with on Xbox, but I didn't have the likes of Ronaldo or Gareth Bale. Oh, actually I had Gareth Bale, he was my MVP, and my strike force was Neymar, Mbappe and Bale, so actually, it's quite OP. I managed to get 38 wins, and the week after, I think I bought Ronaldo then, and everything starts to click more and more.
And has your formation changed throughout obviously when the game came out?
Actually, not, or yes. I tried over the first few weeks. I just tried FUT draft, every formation, what works, what doesn't work in this game. And when it came to FUT Champions, I started to play and choose between 4-1-2-1-2 narrow or 4-2-3-1. And now I'm actually playing and starting every game with the narrow formation. But if it doesn't work, if it doesn't click against this opponent, everyone has his own tactics, then I change to 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-2-1.
How quickly do you, so say you lose a match or you lose 2 matches, does that make you all of a sudden just doubt your formation entirely and say, I need to change this right now, this isn't working for me anymore? Or are you kind of the player that says, this is my style, I know this works, maybe I just got unlucky in this match and I just have to, keep sticking with what I'm good at?
In the weekend league against most of the casuals, the narrow formation will do for you. But I noticed against some pros, I played this week T-Mox, Gorilla, Sean, and so on. And everyone had his own playstyle. And for example, against Gorilla, the narrow formation worked, but against T-Mox, the 4-2-3-1 worked. And with the narrow formation, he dominated me. It's kind of interesting because every player is different and you need to adjust to his gameplay a bit. But of course, actually you want to play your own game style, but it's not possible every time.
So you feel like adapting is almost like the best way against certain players if you know their game style?
Yeah, of course. I need like 10 minutes in-game in FIFA to get to know the play style of my opponent. Of course, it depends on how good the opponent is. Guys like Gorilla will always surprise you even if you've played 10 games against him. But yeah.
Hello listeners, it's producer Ben here. If you like what you're hearing, why not subscribe? Just go to @FUT Champions Pod on Twitter, drop a follow, and then you'll find all your subscription options in the pinned tweet. Oh, and also, while I've got you, why not check out this podcast, More Casual Older Brother, the FUT Weekly podcast, for in-depth reviews, Team of the Week rundown, content chat, and general FUT discussion. This week, we've got Trader Elite, who'll be giving our listeners some Black Friday tips. But for now, back to the FUT Champions podcast.
The talking point at the minute seems to be the patches in FIFA. Everybody seems to have their opinion on the recent patch. How has the game updates affected your gameplay, if it has at all?
At the start of FIFA, I was like an unstoppable goal machine. The keepers, to be honest, were just disgusting. You can't describe it anything else. This patch for the keepers was needed, but I think these AI defending they implemented, that wasn't needed at all. There are few opponents who just switch. When I walk to them, switch the player and let the AI defend against me, and it works better for them than if they defend by themselves. That's kind of ridiculous by EA. I think at the start it was really, really good because you needed to defend by yourself, all by yourself. I needed a lot of time to get used to that. I think in the FUT draft I scored like 5.5 goals a game, but also conceded 1.7 a game.
So would you say like the perfect gameplay would literally just be that first patch plus buffed goalkeepers, and that would be, the perfect gameplay?
But at the moment for me, I have to say I understand how to defend and how to defend aggressive and not too passive, to always have pressure on my opponent to get the ball back. And that's at the moment really good working for me. With the latest patch where they nerfed the passing a bit, they made those random passes a bit worse. So it didn't click anymore for the random opponents against me, and I think it was all in my benefit.
Just to kind of, round up how you've played each week. Yes, we're just talking about formations there. 4-1-2-1-2 was the go-to last year. So you say that narrow's still, the go-to formations this year? The 4-1-2-1-2?
For me, it's the go-to formation at the moment. Last year, it wasn't the narrow formation, actually. It was the 4-2-3-1, which clicked for me against all the pros.
Because that's, again, everyone does have their own, their own style, their own playing style. What I'm seeing at the moment is a lot of weekend league games. The key that a lot of guys are saying is you have to get the first goal. You have to go 1-2-0 up in the first 10 minutes, and then you can really control the game. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, of course. I mean, most of my games I go up within the first 10 minutes, and of course it makes you more confident for that game. Because if you're down, you're just like, oh no, what if I lose this game? It would end my streak and completely ruin my weekend, and you get a bit nervous, I would say. But if you're up 1-0, you don't get nervous at all. You get more confident and play your play style, and that's of course better than going down.
And I'm sure, as casual players, me, Rich, and Colin, when we say, or we attempt to say, right, we're going for the 40-0, when we lose one game in that, say in the first 10 games of that supposed 40-0 run, we just feel like, we're not going to get it, or because we're not going to get it, we're not going to have a good run now. How do you motivate yourself up after losing? Maybe, obviously, you haven't lost any yet, and touch wood, you'll still continue to dominate this month.
I had my first loss of the month last week on Sunday. I played 40 games on that Sunday, on both consoles, 20 games, and I think I lost like the 15th game of the day. So I had to play over 20 games after that, and of course my motivation was a bit killed because I desperately wanted to do a double ATO on the weekend, which would have been so amazing. But I was just like, it's one loss. And if you go 79-1 and 80-0, you have the perfect situation for the qualification. And that's just the motivation for me to impress, firstly, of course, my club, then the scene, and thirdly, I want to prove it to myself that I'm able to qualify again and again.
I'm sure Colin can come in on this one. Say if you do well on the weekend, Michael, what's the support like you get from your esports team, your club? Are they always like to give you a pat on the back? Do they say, fantastic work, Michael, this weekend? I'm sure Colin can come in on this as well. What's important as a player? You've obviously got to feel loved as well. But, if you are doing well, are you getting rewarded?
Yeah, of course they are proud of me when I go 40-0. It's the best they can do, and can talk about that, our guy is first in the world, and that's also good for sponsorships for the future of the club. So the esports section will get better and better, and I will try and do my best to make this possible, and I think I'm on the best way to do so.
When it comes to Weekend League, and especially the support we give the guys, just as an example, when it comes to Poacher right now, he's actually in London at the Fnatic headquarters in our boot camp room. So he'll be playing all 40 of his games on a 1 gigabyte up, 1 gigabyte down, download speed, with pretty much completely reliable internet. It's pretty much completely isolated from the rest of the office. He has, food, he has drinks, he has everything he could ever need. And as well, he'll be staying in the Fnatic apartment, which is just like maybe a half a mile away. So, when it comes to qualification months, we want to support the guys as much as we can. And since Poacher already lives in the UK, it's much easier for us to do stuff like that. As well, you can see other organizations are starting to do similar things. So you have the hashtag United guys, how they've set up their, hashtag United HQ now, where they have, they bring in all 4 of their players for qualification months. And it seems to be going pretty well. I think no one has finished below a 37 or 38 while they've been there. And you've had a bunch of 40s from the likes of Aga and Harry. So we're always trying to put our players in the best positions to succeed and to get the best weekend league results possible. But when it comes to certain results, it's hard to discipline a player or kind of say, oh, you're doing poorly, especially when they have like 1 or 2 disconnections, because then that kind of alters the the way you might look at a weekend. Because if hashtag Ryan, I think it was, finished on 37, but he had 1, maybe 2 disconnections, like how are you as a manager then supposed to say, oh, you should have done better, like don't get a disconnection? Because realistically, especially especially when you're in those environments, it's not your fault. That's an EA issue at that point. If the server actually drops you, unlike when it's, if you're at home or something and it might be your fault because your internet's not as good as possible. And that's why we try and put the guys in those situations. Like when they were at ESWC, all of the guys had a dedicated esports room as well that I think was 500 meg up and down, playing their first weekend league. And that was, I think Poacher and Zimma both had 38s. So, it's always about putting them in the best position to succeed. Speaking
about the numbers, the 14-0s, the 38s, the 39s, before the podcast did start, before this, we are recording on a Friday, so last weekend's breakdown from the PlayStation 4, 30 players got 40 out of 40. That's quite ridiculous when you come to think about it. Is that 26 were from Europe, 3 rest of the world, and 1 from the Americas, and currently 8 players have got 80 out of 80. The question is that the level stepping up this year, or is the PlayStation easier because there's more players, so you're more likely to get matched up against worse players?
Exactly. For me, I play on both consoles, and to be honest, I warm up on the PlayStation, so I always start my games on PlayStation because I think the opponents are a bit easier there, and it feels like that for me. On Xbox, I have way more games where I struggle against my opponents, and I think on PlayStation it is way more easier to get a 40 because there are so many more people that play on PlayStation. But it's actually more difficult to get into the top 100 because of so many people going 40, I lost one game on Sunday and immediately just finished 43rd.
Yeah. Soon it's going to be, you need to get at least maybe 38 wins to even try and get into that top 100 on the PlayStation.
At the moment, if you start your games on Sunday and lose 2 games, you have no chance to get into top 100 because of skill rating. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
And just speaking of, gaming houses and stuff, Colin can come into this after I spoke to Michael, but Michael, say if you and Danny, obviously Danny Fink is Michael's teammate for his esports club, would that help massively, if you two had, a gaming house for the weekend where you could just solely focus on your games with a good internet speed?
I don't think so. I'm at the moment at my own apartment. Bochum helped me getting that apartment, so I'm thankfully for that. But there's actually not that a big difference. You need just a good connection and stay calm, have a calm situation, so no people around you that talk about completely different topics or something like that. With Stark Esports Agency, it's a funny thing. They opened such an apartment for streamers like Tmox and me, and we can get. It's actually in Bochum here, so I could go to Stark's and stream my games there and things like that.
Nice. And Colin, do you think it's something that's going to be on the up? We see it a lot for other games like CS:GO and League of Legends. Do you think it could have that that same kind of a principle with FIFA?
Yeah, I think the only reason that it hasn't necessarily happened yet is just because it's a 1v1 esport, like there's not really as much of a reason for there to be a team house. But I think that when it comes to bigger organizations that have 3, 4, 5 players, it makes sense from a sponsorships and from a commercial standpoint, because having all of your players in one place to create content at any point is so valuable to sponsors, So say, just as an example, say Nike wants to make a piece of content, for you to bring all of your players to, one place, maybe you have to fly everyone to like Los Angeles or something. That could be thousands of dollars in expenses. Whereas if everyone's in the same place already, if everyone's already in London or Paris or wherever it might be, then, they can just come to you and film right there. And then the guys can immediately go back to what they're doing. So it kind of creates a central hub for the players, which is really nice. And as well, from a management standpoint, it's a lot easier to manage the players if they're all, in the house. Because if you look at, our Fanatics League of Legends team, Fanatics Dota team, like they all have team houses, and it's really nice for the organization just to have that access to the players at any point. Whereas if a player is working remotely, sometimes it can be difficult to communicate with them and ensure that maybe they're doing what they need to be. They're filling, their streaming requirements or any kind of that content related stuff.
Nice. And just before we come to the end of this podcast, I'm sure, it's a big talking point. Everyone loves to watch it on YouTube, loves to see it on Twitter. The rewards you get for the weekend league, squad battles. Michael, what was your rewards like this week? Anyone good?
They were insane. You can check it out on my YouTube channel. I started uploading there a few weeks ago.
What's your YouTube channel? Just Megabit?
It's Megabit on YouTube.
Yeah,
yes.
so go and check that out for him.
I can already tell that I made like 2 mil on each console. So,
Wow.
But I had 2 of the Team of the Week packs, so 44 informs altogether.
A lot of people say you need to pump money into the game. You need to pump money, points. Well, I'm sure, yes, at some point you're going to need some money, obviously, to help at the beginning of the game. But I honestly think if you can grind the game to a certain level, I'm sure Rich can come in on this. You can. There's so many ways this year that you can earn rewards from squad battles. The weekend league when it goes live. Is that fair?
The thing is, at the start of every FIFA, the pay to win factor is there, because there's no other options with no weekend league started or squad battles to earn some cash and build a team. And it's a huge influence at the moment in October and November for weekend league. I mean, the likes of Gorilla with their incredible team. I mean, Gorilla is 10 times better than all the casuals he's playing against, and at the same time he's having a 10 times better team. I mean, that's of course a bit unfair, but after a few months, if you're good enough at FIFA, you can also earn a team without putting any cash into it.
But at the same time, Gorilla's only got 38 wins this month. 38 wins over each week. Sorry, so
he's 78.
Oh, sorry,
so
239. So he's dropped one win on each week, and he's supposedly got this fantastic team along with other players that have pumped in a lot of money into like icons and stuff. Is it just a case of being unlucky there, or is it you being a step above?
You can lose one game so fast. I mean, there just has to be one goal and you don't score and you lose. Even a great team doesn't secure you for that scenario. I mean, of course, it does help you a lot to score easier. You can create more chances and score better with them, but the team isn't 100%. There also has to be a good player behind it.
Like, did you feel that there was has there been an element of luck, do you think, in your 159 out of 60 so far? Or do you feel like you deserved every win and it was, 100% just like all skill based?
To be honest, the loss was so undeserved, but of course I had a few games where I struggled more. In the first weekend on Xbox, I think it was like the 20th game or something like that, I went to a penalty shootout, and penalty shootout is just luck. And this time I managed to win. I was just going crazy because I thought I lost the game. I think I scored equalizer like in the 90th minute. That was the game I think I was a bit lucky, but most of the games, to be honest, I just dominate and win deserved. I mean, I have like 60 rage quits out of the 80 games every weekend, and out of these 20 games, like I think 15 close games are there every weekend, where I really need to focus and play my best.
And obviously, just before we close up the podcast, Team of the Week obviously came out from the international break. Rich, who's standing out for you in that Team of the Week?
I think you've got to be looking at that Heung-min Son up top. He's got a striker card now. 88 pace, 85 shooting, I think, on that. So
yeah.
I can see that being a super sub. Lukaku, maybe, for some players. He's got an inform, which will also boost up his one-to-watch card as well. But just today, this morning, the Player of the Month, Leroy Sané, was released.
Yeah.
The squad builder challenge that you can do. I think it costs about 270k right now of recording. That'll probably drop to maybe 200k in the next couple of weeks that he's available. 95 pace on that card, so...
Yeah, his cards looks insane.
Yeah, that's going to be a super sub for a lot of people in the weekend league.
And for you, Michael, who are you looking at in that team? Eriksen's in there. Yes, he's not everyone's go-to, but still 89 rated. A fantastic hat-trick against Ireland the other day.
For me, in the Team of the Week, the standout players were, of course, the most valuable ones, with Mane, Eriksen, Lukaku, and Son. I think for me, Son is the MVP this weekend. This Team of the Week, he's like 400k for these stats. I mean, he's a bit overpriced in my opinion, but I packed him 4 times, so I was really, really happy with that.
Nice. And Colin as well. Any of your boys done well on their rewards this week?
Actually, Poacher's been saving his top 100 rewards since the beginning. So he had, I think, 4 Ultimate Team of the Week packs, which are the 11. And then I think he had 3 of the premiums, which is like the 3, I think. So I think all told, he had maybe like 50 plus informs. And I think he made 2 or 3 million off of all of his packs. And then was able to pick up Ronaldinho. So
Crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a good week for people to be opening their packs. I think I saw Tim Ox as well, like saved his packs, opened his, got like 3 or 4 million coins out of it as well. So this was definitely the weekend that a lot of guys that had been saving were like, all right, I think it's finally time to pull the trigger.
Nice one. And just before we close the podcast, Megabit, if there's any advice you give out to a casual player that wants to make, that next step to becoming a pro, what advice would you give them?
As I said earlier, start playing online tournaments, and under the week you'll get better by that. Playing against pros or players that are better than you or on your same level will always develop your game style. Whereas playing against worse opponents doesn't develop your play style. You're just playing and scoring goals, and it's not benefiting you. So I would say online tournaments, I'm hoping Gfinity will release them as soon as possible. Mark my words, I think there will be play like a legend again, but with like a qualification spot for an EA event. I could imagine that. That would be insane, with like online qualification before that, and that would be the way to go for casuals to improve.
Exactly that. And anything you want to add, Richard, before Megabit goes?
No, just thank you for joining us, Megabit. I know you're taking...
It was an honor for me here.
Busy schedule this weekend, and best of luck this weekend with your games.
Yeah, I need to start my games now.
Hopefully he can be on for another 40 this weekend. It'll be 120 for the month then. Obviously, if he doesn't...
Then I'm going for that unbeaten month.
Yeah, exactly that. But big thank you to Colin for coming on. Richard, obviously, co-host, and of course, Micheal Bittner, aka Megabit. If you have enjoyed the show, make sure you be sure to subscribe, whether it's on Mixcloud, iTunes, or YouTube. It's going to be a weekly podcast. If you want to get involved, use the hashtag FUT Champs Pod. But until next time, good luck on Weekend League, and we'll catch you later. Bye bye.